Welcome to this walkthrough of my M365 discovery tool. Here I'm going to run through the script completely end to end and show you some of the new features at the end as well, to do with the migration aspect, where it can create the identities in the target tenant for you as well. But what I want to do first is really give you a good overview of how to run the script and how to get the best out of it so that you can do that effectively. Now, the best way to run it is to drop it onto your C drive. I like a scripts directory myself, and you can see that's in there. So we're going to run up PowerShell with an admin window there, as you can see, and we will just open up the script and bring that in. Here we go. So before we just kick it off and run it, I want to show you, let me just scroll that down, because there's an item in here which I wanted to talk about first, these hard-coded entries. Now, the script itself obviously makes a connection to 5 different M365 modules, including like the Teams, the SharePoint, the Azure AD, MS Online, and obviously Exchange Online as well. Now, if you were to have an account that has no MFA on it, and you're happy to put the credentials in the script, obviously it's just local, you can do that. That'll make it run through very nice and quickly on all of them. It's not going to prompt you for anything as you run through the script and run things. If you choose not to and you want to enter them as they come up for prompts, then by all means you can do so. So there's an opportunity to put them in here if it doesn't have MFA. Now remember that. But what I'm going to do is just show you there we need a bit of space to run it. So we do that and play, and you can see we start off with this menu here. In here you'll notice there's 2 items at the top saying, firstly, we don't have a runtime credential stored, which is what I was just talking about in that screen there. And also we don't have a tenant name stored either, which is that option 2. So what you can do is you can do option 1, which is keying in the username and password for your admin user and add that in. Again, that will only work if you don't have MFA on it. I know I keep coming back to this, but it is an important step. If you do have MFA on the account that you're using to connect to the tenant to get the data out, just leave that option alone. Don't put anything in option 1. Don't hard code everything. What it will do is it will prompt you every time it needs to attach to one of those modules. It'll prompt you to log in with the MFA with a Microsoft prompt so it can get to the data. So number 2 there is the tenant name. Obviously we need to know what the tenant name is so the reporting and everything can be done correctly, especially around SharePoint and that sort of thing. So in this example, I'm going to use number 1. I'm not going to hard code, but I don't have MFA on the account I want to use for pickup. So I'll use number 1 there, and it's going to come up with a prompt asking for those. So I'm just going to key those in like that and hit OK. It will then jump back to the menu again, telling us credentials stored, and you can see now that it's got option 1 is good. We need to put in the tenant name, so I'll do item 2 there, and that is just the prefix, not the whole on Microsoft.com, just wants the prefix, which you can see there is just Xeotrope. So enter that, and you can see these 2 have now gone green. It knows what the base SPO site is, and it's going to store the script output in that C drive scripts folder. And let me just talk very briefly about what it's going to do for us. You can see on the menu here, items 4 through to A are the individual reports. So if you want an individual CSV output for things like the Exchange Online usage or SharePoint sizes, Teams reports, you can do them individually like that. Now, the best option here is to use this one. I'm going to say Z, I'm English, but for my US guys, that is option Z. And you can see that is a full discovery report. It's going to run every report it can. But the nice thing is, it'll create a spreadsheet at the end. So you can just run up the spreadsheet. You've got a full report there to use. Now with the double Z at the end there, which is when you run after you've done everything, what it will then do, and this is the newest addition I've just put in here, it will create PowerShell code and embed that back into that spreadsheet for you, which allows you to create objects in the target tenant. So if you were doing a migration, and it will let you create them as mail contacts, mail users with the Exchange GUID and the legacy Exchange DN bound to them as well. Especially be useful if you're doing an MRS migration tenant to tenant that way. And the 4th option, just go and create the mailbox accounts in that target tenant as well. So if you had a large migration of a few thousand people, you could, obviously you might be using a provisioning system elsewhere, but if you've got a small migration, maybe you're doing 50, 100, 200, and you do have to go and create those accounts, this is a nice way to take your discovery report, turn it into a migration run sheet. It'll create the PowerShell for you to create those mailbox accounts or whatever you need to do at the other end, but you can just run and create them. It sets up the passwords, it keeps a log of the passwords it's set, the whole thing. But I'm going to show you that as well, walk through the script on exactly what it does and how it does that. So with our credentials set in there, I'm going to use that Option Z and kick off that report. Now, first thing it'll do is it'll go through and connect to all of the different PowerShell modules inside M365 that it needs relatively quickly, and then it'll start running all of those reports. As you can see, they're already collecting data. Now, I'm going to be just pausing it as I go through, just in the interest of time for the video. It can take, well, I guess, depend on your connection to Microsoft and how quickly things can come back to you. But we just let it roll, and we'll come back once it's closer to completion. I'll just catch this one as it's going through. You can see it's grabbing all the different teams that it can see. It'll also grab all the channels and all the permissions associated with them as well. So they're always good to have in a report. I'll just capture that just right at the end there. You'll see it's about to finish off the last mailbox. There's all the CSV files it just pushed up at the end, and it's now created that spreadsheet for us. So let's go and have a quick look at that. Now, looking in that C drive scripts again, you can see there's also a log file there, which keeps track of everything that it did. See everything it looked at and talked to, you can check that out. But you can see it's got all the different CSV files based on all the reports that it's run. But the main one is this guy here, which I'll open up, which is our main M365 tenant report. Open that. Now, what you can see here, first tab, mailboxes, and all the different things that you want to see about the mailbox, all the addresses, exchange grid. These are empty. We don't have anything in the Azure AD for department, office, and title, but if you did, it will appear there. Batch name, however, is a field that I put in manually. This is to help out if you are using this as a migration tool. You could put a batch name in there, and it makes it easy to create your CSVs for your batches and things like that. So just as I say, a handy column to have. If I go across to the right here, you can see we're collecting mailbox sizes, last logon times, other information. You can see some of these accounts I've just created, they're not being used, which is why we've got nothing in those. And also OneDrive status. So anybody that is using their OneDrive, you can see that's putting the details about those, how much storage space, that it was last modified or used, any full access, send as or send on behalf of delegates, show up here just with a delimiter of that character there, just to help out, and all of the email addresses, what licenses they have on 365, if they have any admin roles, and of course that legacy Exchange DN, which is something they have as well. On the Teams members, we've got Teams members, Teams channels, and Teams. I'm going to look at the Teams one first. So that'll show us our main teams that we have, and you can see information around those, which is the base set. All the different members of the teams are specced out like so. Now that is useful for an overview, but you can see obviously having the delimited format with the members of the team isn't terribly useful. So what we would do instead, because we might look at it and say, well, I want to know John Smith. I want to know all the teams that he's a member of. Now, let me show you how you can do that with this sheet. So if we look at Teams channels, first of all, this is a really locked list, but what it'll show you is the team display name and the channel name, channel type, and give the user. So these are useful if you want to use them as let's do a filter here. You could filter them through and say, I want to look at the sales team, and I want to look at a particular channel, and then it drills it down and you can see who is in that and what their rights are in here. It's just handy, as I say, if we're doing this type of work here. But if we do it from the team's members, what we could do here is do a similar sort of report. If we just do a filter, I could look at it and say, I want to know from the username, I want to pick out this chap, John Smith, and quite quickly it'll show us all the teams that he is part of, sales and distribution. So Once you have a huge list, you might find that a bit more valuable, but it means that you can use the filter to go through and see what you have for membership of different people and also membership of the teams and channels themselves. Pretty handy. On to things like SharePoint. SharePoint. What you'll see here, now this is an interesting way of reading it because the SharePoint sites themselves mix in with what is on Teams, because obviously you would know that SharePoint is the backend for the Teams storage. But what you're seeing here is, yes, we have some actual SharePoint sites, but we also have our Teams sites mixed in here. So you may not want to have those together. So what you have is two columns here to say, is it a Teams connected and is it Teams channel connected? So once again, have a look at the filters and we can say Teams connected. We want to say false, which will mean it's a SharePoint site only. And you can see now it's drilling down to what is just in SharePoint versus what is in the Teams connected site. But it gives you everything in terms of the sizing and what is in the URL. Now OneDrive will just tell us anybody that has OneDrive active and what their storage is like. You can see that there, and that last modified it, storage and quota. Well, moving into MFA. Now I personally like this one because if you're in the process of rolling out MFA, it can show you who's got MFA set up, who's actually done the registration of it, and who it's enforced for, but also you can see what the MFA method is as well, and if they're an admin or not. So you can start to look at it and say, I want to do a report of all my admins and find out who's done the MFA setup and who's having MFA enforced, and you can do that obviously with the same type of filters there as well. And it's just a nice report to see really what's going on with MFA, and also does anybody have any credentials blocked because of MFA as well, and the last time they were accessed to. Moving into guest accounts, we only have one on there, and what was it type? Was it created in the tenant directly or was it an invitation? Do they appear on address lists? That type of thing. So good report to have there, and likewise with contacts. Now in this particular tenant we don't have any contacts, but they would show up here. Moving down to distribution lists, here we have company-wide DL and salespeople, just two distribution lists, but what it's doing is it's showing from a DL members view of what it looks like. If we go across to just the distribution lists, we can see that we have three listed here. You can see what they're like and whether they are, we can see here, security groups, distribution groups, what type of group they are set up. As you can see, all the different flags you get. But the DL members, so you could say who is a member of the company-wide DL, you get a list, and obviously salespeople as well. But again, you could do a filter and filter it down per person. We can say we just want to see what Carlos is a member of, and you can see he's part of 2 DLs. So you can use these reports how you like. You create your own pivot tables, filters, and adjustments just to see the data. What I was doing here was just presenting the data in such a way that you can manipulate accordingly and just use these reports for multiple purposes, putting that data in just a usable format on the screen as you can see. Now let's come back to the mailbox one, because when we're looking at migration tasks, this is the extra thing that I have just added, which I'm very pleased with. But what we'll do is we will now need to close that out. Don't have it open when you run this next step, otherwise it's definitely not going to work. I will save those changes. I did some layout changes and filters and things, so we'll leave those there. So let's drop back into the PowerShell. So what I want to do is run the ZZ option. And we'll get asked, obviously it knows what report it just made, which was this one here. It knows how many lines are in the report, there's 8. And it's asking us, what do we want to do? Do we want to create contacts, users, or users with the mapped GUID? Now this is handy if you're doing an MRS migration, because when it creates the mail user account, which it's going to bind to, it will automatically map across the Exchange GUID and the legacy DN as well, which is obviously what you need to do in that type of migration. Or in this one here, number 4, it will just go ahead and create a mailbox user straight for you. In this example, I'm going to use option 1 first, and then I'm going to do option 3 and 4, but we'll just do option 1. It will need to know the target UPN suffix, because if we're doing a migration into a target tenant, there's no way that this tenant currently knows where we are migrating to. Now this is the one we've used in other demos, which is the alien.com. Now that's, as I say, it's going to be your UPN suffix, just the UPN suffix. And you'll see what it does when I enter here. It's going to grab that. You can see it opened the spreadsheet in the background, made a lot of changes to it, and it's come back here. It happens very quickly. Now, if we go and open that spreadsheet now, we're going to check out what it's done for us. So back in here, open that up again, and it drops you straight back to where we left off. But you can see it's added these extra columns now. So it does a calculation on what the first and last name is. As you can see here, it takes a record of the UPN, because these items it's put in, if I just double click those to bring them out, what it's done is it's added these PowerShell commands that you would use on the target tenant to create a mail contact based on this entry. What I did with it was I didn't hard code these items into this item here. As you can see, it puts the formula in for it. So it means that if you were to go over the other side here and edit one of these, let's say we edit this address and say it's actually admin, change it for some reason, you go across back to here, see now it's changed it in the formula. So any updates that you do, like on here, if you made John, see that there is grabbing the data from the other side. So if I go here and we change his name to John Smith, notice on this side it's changing it as well. So it becomes a little bit more dynamic in what it's doing. But the essence of it is that what it's doing is it's taking your UPN suffix you put in and giving you PowerShell commands that you can then cut and paste into that other target window. Excuse me. And as you can see here, it's when you do a mail contact, you need to do 2, create it, and then apply the email address for that separately. But it means that what you can also do then is, let's suppose we go across here and we want to go to batch name, and we give it a batch name and say, okay, batch 1 is for John Smith, and also we're going to do Fred Logs as well. What you then do is filter that out, and you can grab just batch 1, bam, and we go across the other side here, and then you've got all your commands that you would then just cut and paste into your PowerShell window to go and create those entries inside the target tenant. So that's really how you grab a whole block of them based on the people that you do want to migrate. You might not have people that are migrating. You might have admin accounts and other things that you don't want to create, in this case, a mail contact for. And you can obviously do that with filtering on that batch name, which is handy. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put that filter back. Now I don't need to go and delete anything. I can just leave this alone, and I'm going to just come out. I will save it. That's fine. It can do that. But I'm going to go back to the script now, and I'm going to run that again. But this time, I'm going to say item 3, which is for the creating a mail user with the mapped exchange GUID and legacy DN. So let's do that. Again, it's going to ask for that. Normally, you just be running this once, depending on the option. But in this demo, I'm just going to run them multiple times. So let's open it in the background and then close it again. Let's go and check it out. So open this one up, and you can see it's very slightly different. We've still got our first name, last name as before, and a UPN suffix, but this time we've got an account password, because when you create a mail user, that is the mail user, as you would know, can log on. So of course we need to randomize a password, very similar to the Microsoft ones, is the algorithm I chose there, and it just creates it, and it will create you these PowerShell commands to go and make those. And as you can see, there's a bit more to it to make a mail user. And also, these are our commands here to set the legacy DN, because you obviously add that as an X500 address into the email addresses. So there's the code for that. And also, go here, as you can see, set the exchange GUID as well. So when you're doing your MRS binding, that'll work through. So once again, go back to your batch name, grab the ones you want, and you can grab your set of 3 commands to go and provision those mail users with the exchange GUID and with the legacy DN as well. Now let's close that one out again. Save it, doesn't matter. And I'm going to go back here, and I'll use number 4 instead. that. There we go. And pretty quick. And there. Now we've actually finished with this now. I can do 0 and come out. So that's our last one. Let's go check that out. Open that up. And we can see now, again, first name, last name, different passwords. Clearly it's random each time, but where I'm interested is this one here, which is the new mailbox item. So I'm going to grab a couple of these. I'm going to grab, do you know what? I'm going to grab block here. Those are the ones we've chosen that we are going to migrate from that Zoetrope tenant across to Planium.com. We're just going to let this script create those IDs in the target tenant for us. So grab those out. I'll start with a nice fresh PowerShell window, but all you do is just cut and paste those in. And in this case, we are going to need to do the next exchange line. So credentials go in there, sign in. Very prompt. And that will connect in. Now, before I just go ahead and run this, I want to show you what that looks like on the active users. This is on the target tenant. So this is on the Planium tenant. This is what we're migrating to, and you can see list of users. Let me just refresh, give a nice fresh screen. There we are. That's our user list. Now, if I go back to our script item here, what I'm going to do here is just hit play. That will go ahead and create those 6 accounts. Now, if that was a list of 200, we'll go through and do that as well, but I'll just let it go through and create those. Clearly, that message there is saying that once it's gone in, we need to assign it a license. That's fair enough to do. We'll just let that carry on quick as it runs through. Okay, drop that down and hit refresh here. And look at that, there's all our people. Now that really couldn't be an easier way to get identities into 365, to be perfectly honest with you. And what I could do here is we could just do a quick filter and we just have a look for unlicensed users. It should give us our list here, and quite easily do that and here and give them a license. Yeah, bam. Now all of those people are good. Yep, unlicensed, has nothing in it. Clear that out, and really we have all our accounts ready to go. So, like I say, very easy way to get accounts created, and these are the passwords which we then give to the users as well. Nice and quick. Let me just run back over the front here, and you can see that that could be a list. As I say, could be a few thousand in there. It's up to you how you want to manipulate that and use the data, but it is definitely something I'm very pleased with. Be created. I use this a lot myself. Very happy that you're choosing to use it as well. Reach out to me if you've got any questions. Normal email address mark@cloudgeezer.com, and if you don't mind, just subscribe to that channel. That certainly helps me out. I really appreciate that, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you very much.